Let's get together, reminisce. We're smoking out on the back deck, and it can't get better than this. And you're looking wicked, and so am I. Let's get together and reminisce. No matter how hard we might try, let's French inhale, let's French kiss. French inhale, French inhale, French inhale.
All right, welcome to week 3, you guys, and the class that will change the way you perceive comedy for the rest of your life. Again, apologies in advance. I've talked to Ira and Keith a little bit about this because they've done the class before, and it's like, do you want me to like save this to the end of the class so you can bow out? But they're both kind of like, it never hurts to hear these things again, just as a reinforcement. So today's thematic discussion is going to be about bad habits, and just like in previous classes, if you have any questions or something, type it into the private chat, or just interrupt me and ask the question. But one of the things that this class I think could potentially help with is streamlining some and fast tracking some of the trial and error that comedians go through, and also kind of opening up the doors to understanding how bookers digest a submission video or a live audition, or how contests or festival judges, that sort of thing, do the same. And one of the things that happens is that if you have too many bad habits in your showcase set, or in a live audition, or a set that you do at a club for a booker or whatever, it tends to make them think that you might be a little bit more tied towards the open mic scene than towards being ready for full-time work in the dedicated comedy venue scene, whether it's at a club or a theater or whatever it may be. And so one of the things that when this class first started to develop, this is one of the things that we would just talk about on a week-to-week basis. And then David and I were like, why don't we just throw these ideas together and make it a thematic discussion for one of the weeks? And so one of the very first graphics I ever created for comedy feedback was this kind of like 7 deadly sins of comedy that used to talk about if we would go out for dinner after a show for a World Series event, or if I was doing a one-on-one with a client, and just taking a look at some of these things that really kind of stand out to bookers and judges as elements within a performance that maybe are tied closer to the open mic scene than they are to someone who's working full-time in a dedicated comedy venue. And so one of the things we can do is just kind of go over those 7 things one by one. And just because the graphic will be up and I might not be able to see all you guys, if you do have a question, maybe just type it in the private chat while we're going over any of the 7 points we're going to discuss, or just interrupt me. I'm cool with that. So David, why don't we throw that back up again, and I'll just start. So a trend that I've noticed a lot, I'm 172 videos through this season's World Series submissions, and over the past decade I've probably watched 7,500 submission videos. A massive trend right now is people taking probably what are roast jokes in a thematic show, a thematic roast show, and using it almost as their opener or icebreaker. And we discussed last week sort of the idea of why an icebreaker is more of a coping mechanism for the comedian than it is a assuring element for the audience. And so if we look at the first thing here that I have up, it's funny because I think I created this graphic in 2019 or something like that. But I know what I look like is one of those things where it can be seen as a very easy way to get to a laugh on stage. And as we discussed, I think in week 1, there's this massive difference now from a producer's point of view of the difference between an earned laugh and an easy laugh. And as we talked in week 2 with authenticity, if you have a joke that works, you don't necessarily have to abandon it if the structure isn't fully functional for you. You could just reformat it. And someone who's in the class this session, Ira, has done a very good job of taking some of these I look like jokes that used to quite literally start with a trope, I know I look like X or Y. And now they're kind of like these hidden gems in the middle of a longer form joke, sort of as a throwaway line or a secondary laugh or a tag to a joke. And so what would happen is, from the perspective of a booker, They could potentially be like, oh, this person is taking the easiest way to a quick laugh here. They're not really showing a lot of dedication to the craftsmanship of writing comedy and a full understanding of the structure of like setup and tag and punch. And so, but you could spin that, and if you find a clever way to include an I look like joke, you could go from what could be perceived as a negative element of your writing and performing into a massive positive. And I think that's something that Ira has done quite well. And so when we finish this full discussion on these 7 points, I might throw it back to Ira for him to give a couple of examples of how he's kind of incorporated that. But just the actual trope phrase of I know what I look like, or I know what you're thinking, which is the second point here, are two elements on stage that immediately beacon to a booker or a judge of a contest or festival that, oh, this person's really tied to the open mic scene. They're just using this quick way to get into this joke that has no context or relationship to them as a person, the defining statement they may have used off the top. It's just a quick, easy, simple laugh that's completely out of context. And, you know, for every Mitch Hedberg or Stephen Wright or Phil Hanley one-liner comic like that, there's 1,000 storytellers. So almost every single comedian is a storyteller. So to kind of use a one-liner trope is a bit confusing, as we talked last week stylistically, for someone who's watching that. So if you do have a joke that relies on your appearance, try and hide it a little bit. Try and find a wrinkle or the second layer to make that reference, because that would go from like potential negative perspective from the booker into a really positive appreciation of the time you took to incorporate the joke in a clever way, organically and naturally into your set. And in terms of phrases on stage, that I know what you're thinking, it bugs me so much. It used to be my biggest pet peeve. It's still way up there, but it's now my second biggest pet peeve. We'll get to the biggest one a little bit later, but I know what you're thinking is so presumptuous. It's like, as a comedian, you don't know what these people are thinking in the audience. Someone's probably thinking about their mortgage, and someone else is thinking about like, holy shit, we paid $30 for a babysitter to watch this. You know, it's like your job as a comedian is to get people to agree with the way that you think and you present ideas and observations of the world. And so most of the time when a comedian says, I know what you're thinking, it actually isn't what the audience is thinking. Yeah. And it's a very quick, easy trope way to get into a premise. But if you pay attention to the detail of your writing and your setups and your exposition, you can get there in a much more interesting and organic way than just, I know what you're thinking. So try and avoid that phrase. That's a real big red flag phrase. For those of you who may have done a one-on-one session with me that included a scorecard, there's that entire section at the bottom that is the red flag bad habits element. And that's one of the ones that just immediately stands out to me. Make some noise. So that's another kind of, this is a catch-all kind of phrase for this 7 deadly sins of comedy. The make some noise is just any sort of pander element that doesn't add to the joke itself. Things like give it up for X, Y, or Z, military, or my single people, or where are all the ladies at? Anything that just elicits applause that has nothing to do with the context of a joke. If you're hosting, great. You need to get some energy into the crowd. David has a great way of getting some energy into the crowd. When he does hosting gigs, he'll say, you guys have only been in an audience for about 10 minutes. These comedians have been practicing their material for months, if not years. So let's work together. And he'll do a few things that makes the audience make noise together collectively so that they begin to understand that they need to work as an entity together to make the show good. But in a showcase set, it's about showing the most efficient highlights of your own writing and performing style. And any of those pander elements just are like massive negatives from the perspective of a booker. But a booker doesn't want to pay you to come to their club to ask people to make noise. They're paying you to go there and through your writing and performing to organically get people to clap and applaud and cheer. And so they could pay anyone to go up and do these pander things. Like we've all seen people at a mic or even in a comedy club do all of these types of pander things. And I think personally, it's just kind of a coping mechanism. If they haven't heard an applause break in a while, they're like, okay, where are all my singles at? And then they tell a joke about being single. Well, just tell the joke about being single and trust that it's funny enough that you're going to elicit a response of laughter and applause. We're bumping the consistency discussion to week 5 because Brian is going to jump in as a guest mentor next week. But one of the things we talk about in consistency is, the ability to have conviction in your performance, and any of these pander elements that are eliciting applause or claps that have nothing to do with the structure of your jokes are just elements that bookers would see as something that you're just doing to appease yourself when you're on stage. The taking notes on stage is a massive thing in a film showcase or a live audition. The thing with a submission video or a live audition, there's one main goal for that, and that's to earn the trust of whoever is booking that venue or whoever is producing that contest to trust you with more stage time. And the easiest way to lose trust for more stage time is if the booker or judge thinks you can't even remember your 5-minute set without taking notes on stage. In the last 7 or 8 years, this has kind of begun to expand into also taking your phone on stage. I know that there's a lot of comedians that'll take their phone on stage to put a timer up or to record themselves. There's other ways to do that without taking your phone on stage, where a booker or a judge might be like, oh, do they have their notes app open? Is there set list on their phone? Are they looking to see if they have 3 minutes left? Or are they looking because they forgot what their next joke is going to be? And so remove any potential distraction where the booker or judge might think you're referring to notes on stage. And just a subsection of this conversation, when I'm talking about removing distractions, this can extend to other elements of potential distraction on stage. One of the things is taking an alcoholic beverage on stage. I strongly believe that any film showcase or live audition that you do at a club, the only beverage you should take on stage would clearly be a bottle of water. It can't be misinterpreted as anything else. Even a glass could be a vodka 7 or something like that. And that sounds like really pedantic, but you never know who's going to be watching your video. And maybe the club, maybe the Funny Bone in Omaha, this is probably not true, but maybe the Funny Bone in Omaha has a liquor license that's really weird, and you can't have liquor on stage. You're Ron White, you can't bring your drink up on stage. When I ran the comedy club here in Vancouver, the Comedy Mix, the liquor license is performers are not allowed to drink while performing. It's some weird archaic liquor law, but it was against the rules. And so when Ron White, we had to tell him, like, man, you can't take a drink on stage. Like, why can I take something on stage that looks like a drink? I'm like, yeah, you can do that. But Sean Maginder, who's done a bunch of movies and TV and stuff, he had a Corona on stage, and I literally had to go on stage and take it from him. And I had to do it in like what I was hoping would either be the kindest way so he doesn't get mad at me, or a way that he can make fun of me so he's not the bad guy in the scenario. And so what he ended up doing was we had tables all the way to the front of the stage, and he just put it on one of the front tables, and whenever he wanted a drink, he stood on their table and leaned down and grabbed his beer and said, and he's like, I'm just an audience member right now. And then he would walk back on stage and tell the next joke. And so I thought he handled it in a really great way, but reverse engineer that entire scenario. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, can this person not get through 3 minutes on stage without a Bud Light? Or there's these things where you're like, as a booker, I've watched thousands of submission videos from people looking for work, and just human nature is that you're looking for ways to separate the wheat and the chaff, and having some kind of discernible factor that you would say no to someone and yes to someone else. And so I'm a strong proponent of removing any potential distraction that might make someone's decision who's in a position to potentially trust me with more stage time to say no. So taking a drink on stage is a big one of those. Taking notes on stage is another big one of those. I think probably the biggest red flag that someone is still tied to the open mic scene is the use, the verbal tick of using a collective noun for the audience, almost like an attention-seeking thing, like a teacher would say. It's like, okay, guys, here's my next joke, guys. And so I don't know how many of you have watched the video that I linked in the course outline with Drew Schaefer, but He came and he did a satellite event for the World Series of Comedy, and he was in the wild card round. He did 4 minutes and 35 seconds, I think, in his 5 minutes. He got a big laugh at the end, so he left, which is great. But probably within the first 30 seconds, he said the word guys to refer to the audience at least 5 times, because by that point, I'd marked 5 tally marks down. And then I kept keeping tally marks for the remainder of the set. And it turned out that he did it 17 times in 4.5 minutes. And we went out for dinner that day. Dinner, I say. It was like Shake Shack? No, Steak and Shake? Whatever. It was like one of those like dive burger joints in St. Charles, Illinois. And he's there with his wife, who was already in round 2. And he didn't advance to round 2. And I was talking to him. I go, do you realize how often you say guys on stage? He's like, no. And I go, you said it 17 times. He's like, no way I did. And we streamed it. So I sent him the streaming link so that he could watch it, and he couldn't believe it. He was 4.5, 5 years into comedy at that point, and he was not even aware that that was a bad habit that he had. So a couple of people ended up dropping out of the second round. We weren't able to travel to St. Charles, and he was the second alternate, and he got on to the 7-minute round 2 show a couple nights later. And he only said it twice. He was now more aware of it. And it's something that he almost immediately eliminated in his onstage vocabulary. And any kind of verbal tick or physical tick, Dylan, that's why I mentioned the OK sign with you during our one-on-one session. Those are the types of things that sometimes distract a viewer. And instead of paying attention to the comedy, sometimes they get lulled in by the rhythmic cadence of a verbal tick or the kind of physical rhythm of a physical tick. Another example for you guys in the class, in 2017 at the main event semifinals, I was sitting at a judge's table with 5 other industry, and one of the semifinalists was on, and he flipped his hair 19 times in a 11-minute set in the semifinals. And I know it was 19 times because the club owner next to me and the agent next to her were marking it down, kind of like I had done the tally marks with Drew. And they were no longer paying attention to his performance, and he didn't advance. And he's a very strong comedian who subsequently went on to win the San Francisco International Comedy Competition. So, I mean, the World Series of Comedy should have been something that was kind of comparable for him to potentially win as well. And he didn't advance from the semifinals because there is a table of 6 judges out of the 18-person judging panel who were distracted by a physical trait that he had on stage, and they weren't paying attention to his material. And so, again, I know that this is saying guys a lot is kind of like the balloon thing I have here on the graphic, but it's just another example of a distraction for a potential viewer that might be offering you extra stage time. And so just try and avoid those distractions as much as possible. And most comedians, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the class today, tend to figure that out through trial and error 4, 5, 6, 7 years into their career. Like I said, Drew was 4.5 years in. His wife is a comedian. She didn't notice it about him. He's a comedian. He didn't notice it about himself. And it wasn't until an outside person was like, oh, I didn't notice that. And then he made a funny little video testimonial for us. This next point, I'm going to leave on this because that is now my largest pet peeve. And it's also kind of meta and funny. But the asking questions as premise intros. I think this is one of the habits that most comedians fall into early in their career. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is likely because it's part and parcel with a potential coping mechanism. If you ask the question audience about a premise, it's almost like implicitly asking their permission to talk about that premise. But there's a lot of negatives associated with that. One, we'll talk about this in week 5, but one, it kind of shows a lack of conviction in the subject matter because you're not willing to just go into it balls to the wall immediately. You have to tiptoe your way in by asking people about the subject matter in order to get into it. And then there's the other element of it takes time, and time is precious in a live audition or a live contest set or a submission video. You only have 2 commodities in stand-up comedy, and that's time and vocabulary. And if you're wasting one of those 2, you're doing yourself a disservice. And so asking questions to get into a premise takes time, and it may not seem like a lot, but if it's a habit that you have quite often, and if it's a 5-minute submission video and you have 7 premises in there and you spend 8 or 9 seconds, maybe even let's say less than 6 seconds asking the question to get into the premise and doing kind of a call and response with the audience before you start telling the joke. So 7 times 6, 42 seconds, you could have told 1 or 2 more jokes in that same amount of time, and that could just organically increase your laugh meter. It feels like it's more cohesive, it flows stronger, there's less distraction, so it just feels more consistent. And so eliminating questions can help you with that. But to me, the larger issue with asking questions as a premise intro is you now open up this Pandora's box where you don't know what the response is going to be. And yeah, you could write binary options based on what they say back to you. But God forbid, what if they say something funnier than you had planned in your joke? Or what if they step on your punchline? Or the worst is, what if they now think it's okay to talk anytime during your set? The challenge with a live stand-up comedy venue, especially a comedy club, is one that operates 5 or 7 days a week with 7 to 15 shows, depending on the format that they run. Yeah, the Thursday show, you could probably get away with asking questions of premise intro. But what about the 10 p.m. show on a Saturday when someone's just like balls to the wall drunk who probably shouldn't have been let in the first place, but management is like, okay, we'll take the money, and if we have to kick them out, we'll kick them out. But if you use a question as a premise intro, now all of a sudden the person who's been waiting all day to talk during the set feels empowered to talk, and then also don't have the comprehension in that moment because they're 17 Sam Adams deep into shutting up when it's time to shut up. I think I told you guys, maybe it was post-class in week 1, but I had to kick someone out on New Year's Eve here. I was outside talking to them with 30 minutes until their Uber showed up. It was just torturous. It quite literally is the worst job when running a comedy club, is asking someone to leave because they've talked too much during the show. Because to them, they're helping, or they were just laughing, or that's what the person did on TikTok that I saw, or whatever it may be. They asked the question. They started this. And if they're correct in the fact that the comedian started it, it makes it so much harder to discipline someone. And it honestly is the worst part of running any club is asking people to not talk while performers are on stage. And so the Pandora's box of asking a question just opens up so many avenues that are non-productive. For every lightning in a bottle moment that was really awesome, that you hit on something you wouldn't have said, or you catch this moment where you can go on a really great riff and get a lot of laughs out of it, you're 20 times more likely for it to fall flat or blow up in your face. Plus, bookers are savvy enough to realize that lightning in a bottle moments generally can't be reproduced. And so the World Series of Comedy goes to LA Comedy Club in Vegas a lot. It's a very fun club, very well-run club, but being in Vegas, it's one of the clubs that is a little bit more lax in terms of talking with the audience, doing crowd work and that sort of thing. And I've talked to the owners who also book the venue and asked them specifically whether or not they would put any weight into whether or not someone handles either a heckle well or crowd work well, into whether they would book them or not. And both Matt and Joaquin are like, no, we book based on material. Even though we're a club that does not discourage fan and audience and comedian audience interaction, it doesn't go into our booking process because prepared material is the only thing that someone could duplicate on a night-to-night basis. I don't want to book someone hoping they catch lightning in a bottle, and they don't for 4 of the 5 shows that I've booked them. And so even if you feel as if it's a skill that you might have, retain that skill for when you've earned the feature set or you've earned extra stage time somewhere, and let it be a surprise skill that you bring out and show to the booker, the manager of that club. But in terms of it being part of your showcase set or part of the submission video that you use, I highly recommend against it. And this all stems from kind of this coping mechanism habit of asking questions to get into a premise. If you do, there are exceptions to every rule, obviously, and the exception to this rule would be if the question is clearly rhetorical, you make it clearly rhetorical where no one would be able to interject. There's a comedian named Simon King here in Vancouver who does this very well. He'll ask a question and then immediately answer it, so no one can jump in and say anything. And so that's an interesting writing technique to get around this. But in general, I would just say try and avoid asking questions as a premise intro as much as possible. I know that almost the entire panel of the World Series of Comedy judging submission video judges are anti that and tend to dock marks if you start using questions as premise intros. So I'm sure that also equates to the real world. I've talked to multiple club owners and club bookers about this particular subject because they share the sentiment that I have, that the worst part of running a club is asking people to stop talking during a performance. And often it starts because they think that the comedian has opened up the door to conversation because the joke was introduced that way, or it wasn't structured strongly enough for the audience to realize it was meant to be rhetorical in that moment. So just keep an eye out on that in any of your writing in the future. I don't think any of you in the class tend to skew in this direction too much, but if you do, just try and think of a more natural and organic way to get into that premise. And that sort of goes back to week one when we talk about defining statements. If you've created a really strong defining statement, then you should never really have to ask questions to get into it. And then now for my biggest pet peeve currently in comedy, it's the I'm going to leave on this. And the reason it's my biggest pet peeve right now is I feel like it begins to let the audience down. They know that you're about to finish. So mentally, some of them might begin to check out or think, okay, this is a good time for me to go get another drink or go do a washroom break, or maybe I'll start mentally preparing myself for the next comedian. And it eliminates any potential of that psychological edge that comedian has over an audience of the unknown, the unexpected, and also the fear of missing out. And so if you tell someone, I'm going to end on this, or I got one more for you. I know that most comedians are using that as a verbal mechanism to let the showroom manager know that they're wrapping up their set. Yeah, I've seen the light. I'm going to end on this. I got one more for you, that sort of thing. But there's nonverbal ways to indicate that, a little head nod or a finger wag or whatever it may be. There's ways to let the showroom manager know that you need to wrap up on time without doing yourself a disservice of projecting to the audience that you're wrapping up, because there's nothing better for a comedian to have a huge punchline and then say, hey, I've been John Smith. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Now they're like, oh man, I wish I could see more of this person. Why? But if you've already told them that you're going to wrap up on something, their expectations go through the roof. Well, this better be your best joke now. And then if it doesn't hit well, you told me you're going to end on that. So now you're either going to end on a real down note, or you just accidentally lied to them because you're going to tell a savor joke. So you're not really ending on the thing that you were going to end on. You're now ending on this savor joke. So I think it's probably just best to not give any indication to the audience that you're wrapping up, and just finish really strong and say goodnight, repeat your name. I think that's a really great branding opportunity, because then maybe we're in the lobby after the show. We're like, oh, I really liked you. What was your name again? Then follow you on social media or fill out the comment card. Be like, oh, it'd be really great if we had Dylan back or Keith back or Ira back or Scott back, Daniel back. So if you can do something that just ends on a real high note and say goodnight, that's infinitely better than creating this expectation that things are wrapping up. Better be good. Dance for me, monkey, in this moment. And then if it doesn't go well, then you're like hoist upon your own petard. You've kind of screwed yourself in that moment. And so avoiding saying I'm going to leave on this, or I got one more and then I'll be out of here, or whatever verbal way that you indicate that you're about to finish. If you avoid saying that, then all you can have is a high note ending with audiences, because they're not going to mentally check out on you because you told them that you're finishing, or they're not going to have increased expectations because they understand the mechanisms of comedy that you're supposed to end strong. And so using that phrase, although it seems completely innocuous and you're probably just trying to help out the showroom manager, it just does such a disservice to yourself as a comedian that I strongly recommend against using it. So those are the 7 deadly sins that I've seen, and we've been doing these classes for 7 years now, and we've stuck with those 7 because they just sort of feel like the ones that universally showroom managers, bookers, club owners agree with. If I go down to Curtis and talk to Bronwyn, I'll talk to her about this stuff. I'm like, these are the kind of things that sort of bug me. Do they sort of bug you too when you see a submission video or a live audition? And they sort of universally feel as if they're accepted as negatives in a live audition or a submission video. So try and avoid them if you can. Just before we go on to any of the videos, questions that we might have about this kind of stuff, some clarification of any of the things that I was talking about? No? Pretty straightforward. Honestly, I think, as I said, this may ruin a lot of open mics for you guys for the rest of your lives, but I also think like this is one of the discussions, an open discussion like this, that tends to not happen between comedians and people inside the industry, pulling the curtain back and talk about what goes into the mindset of deciding to book someone or give someone extra stage time. And I think of all the weeks that we do, this might be the one that kind of helps you guys fast track your video performances and your live auditions the quickest. I know that even though it wasn't in the context of the class, having that discussion with Drew was just so mind-opening to him. He's like, oh, I don't think I pay attention to my own material enough. I pay attention to the laughs I get, but I'm not paying attention to the areas where I could have saved time or avoided distractions. And so that's what this whole week is about. The feedback that I'm going to provide will be, as it was in the first 2 weeks, somewhat filtered by that perception. But I also know that we just had the discussion and you'd already filmed this stuff. So it's not like we're going to see some kind of wormhole thing where you go through and you change what your video you submitted for this week was. But just think about your writing moving forward to try and avoid those 7 traps that might skew you closer to the open mic scene than to dedicated comedy venues. Cool. We never really talked about an order, so I guess David's just going to surprise us. So here we go. On to the videos.
Mo, I used to weigh 400 pounds. I have a Jewish mother. I work in the cannabis industry, and I'm gay. I was destined to be a comedian. If not that, then a hate crime in waiting. Yep, Grumpy's gay. In fact, all the 7 dwarfs are gay, you know? Think about it. How many straight guys do you know sing and whistle when they go to work? Yeah. And in 3-part harmony. Yeah. You don't see Bill and his buddies on a construction site going, hi-ho, it's off to Lowe's we go. Yeah. The only ones who sing that are the lesbians. And Snow White, oh, yeah. Some prince kissed her when she was in her glass coffin, and everybody was like, oh, true love. No, the dwarfs were like, that was just Prince Andrew. You know his motto, no permission, no pulse, no problem. And you know who Grumpy's ex was? Yeah, it was Papa Smurf. Yeah. That old guy had blue balls. So as I told you earlier, I used to weigh 400 pounds. And you know the reason I lost 150 pounds was because of people like you in the audience. Yeah. Because the minute I got in an elevator, you know what you did? You looked at the maximum capacity sign, and it pissed me off. But that's okay. I got even. I remember 2 guys got in an elevator one day. They looked at me. They looked at the sign. Then I looked at them and I said, hey, you know what happens when a man this large eats Indian food? Well, you're about to find out. Phew! I never saw 2 guys get off an elevator that fast ever. And you know, when you're that big and you try to fly anyway, you know what the airlines do? They treat you like garbage, right? They make you buy 2 seats. I get even with them. I bought them in 2 separate rows. Fuck them. But when you're that big, there's only one place you can shop. A big and tall man store. And the clothes there just aren't the same. You know, the polo shirts are so large, the horse is life size. And then there I had to buy my underwear. Yeah. size 52 bikini briefs. Oh my God. What were these things supposed to do? Make me look sexy? Yeah, I'm standing in front of the mirror, jiggling and jangling naked. I put these on. Who could resist? Could you? I think so. Let me tell you, you'd think the San Andreas Fault had a crack. You'll see my ass hanging out of these. Yeah. They're so big, it's like a fitted sheet. You need 2 hands to fold them. But I'm about to turn 65. Oh, great. You applaud at that. Yeah. As I tell you, I'm getting closer to death, I get applause. But when I tell you I lose 150 pounds, nothing. Yeah, I can see the kind of crowd this is. But, I just hate getting old. Because, when you're young and you drop something, you pick it up. When I drop something, fuck it, I don't need it. And I remember the other day I was flying back from one of my comedy shows, and this woman at the airport comes up to me and says, "Oh, sweetie, I love that beard. Is that your natural hair color?" Like, who the heck is going to color it this color, right? It's not like I go into CVS and I say, "I'm looking for just for men." And she says, "What color are you looking for?" It's like, "Oh, I'm looking for something that makes me think that streaming means peeing all at once, and that live streaming means peeing when you're awake, or that a booty call is scheduling a colonoscopy." She still didn't believe it, that this was my natural hair color. So I had to drop trow. I'm still in trouble with the TSA. But recently, my doctor put me on compression socks. Yeah, I'm still wearing them. Aren't these cute? Yeah. And I'm at the gym one day, and I notice all these high school kids have the same exact socks I had on. I'm like, oh, great. I'm in a fucking gang. And guess what? One of them actually came over to me. He says, "Hey, Pops, what gang you in?" I looked him straight in the eye, and I said, "The blood clots." So the other day, I was getting a massage. Halfway through the massage, guy leans in and whispers in my ear. He says, "Hey, would you like a happy ending?" Sure. Put on a fucking Disney movie. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's okay. He still jerked me off. Because problem was I was getting a chair massage at the mall. But, as I get older, I get, these things bother me, and I don't know if y'all know what drag time story time is, right? When the drag queens go and they tell stories in school, and they're pushing it too far. I don't even agree with it anymore, right? Have you heard the stories that they're doing? Golden showers and the 3 bears. The Grinch's 10 inches. Horton hires a homo. And of course, my favorite one fish, 2 fish, smells like fish, ditch the witch. You can't take it. But I remember a long, long time ago, I had to deal with the one thing a young man dreads the most, having to come out to his mother. And I remember I sat down with my mother and I said, "Ma, I've got something to tell you." And she says, "Oh, sweetie, that's okay. You can tell me anything." Says, "Ma, I'm gay." She went, "Oh, I didn't spend $1,500 on braces for you to suck dick. And don't ever complain about the taste of my cooking now that I know what you put in your mouth." But she didn't mind spending $15,000 on dance lessons, acting classes, and Boy Scouts. What did she think was going to happen?
Nice job, bud. I wrote down while I was watching that, I was like, it's amazing how much energy you exude, even though you weren't in front of an audience. I mean, I think you're just really captivating to watch and interesting to watch. And so sometimes you get a little bit, you get away with a little bit more painting outside the colors because you can overcome that with the energy and the feel of spontaneity while you're performing. Grumpy's gay. I thought that was a good hidden I look like joke in terms of us talking about the 7 deadly sins. You didn't fall into that trap of I know I look like Grumpy if you were gay kind of thing. That's the easiest route to get to that joke. I like the fact that you kind of used it as a bit of a more of a hidden aside or just a reference there. The singing hi ho, hi ho. I really like that part of the joke because it brings to the audience this kind of nostalgia pop culture reference that is pretty much universal. And also it allows you the opportunity to showcase a bit of a hidden skill. Like you're an above average singer. I mean, you're not Pavarotti, but I mean, you can carry a tune during that. And so it's kind of like a fun thing to see on stage as well. And so I thought that was like a really interesting portion of that joke, because I think it added a couple extra elements to it. It added an element of nostalgia, it added an element of pop culture, and it added an element of being able to bring more skills to the table than just pure stand-up. The Indian food in the elevator, I like the direction that you're going in that joke. I know that we talked about it in previous weeks of like, let's try and find a different punch to that or a different kind of payoff to that. I like the visual that you created, and the fact that they're skedaddling, and you just talked about cartoons. So now all of a sudden I'm sort of seeing like the Tom and Jerry, like the puff of dust as they're running out of so I like the direction that's going. I'm not sold that that's 100% where that punch is going to finish, but what I really like about that joke is your mindfulness of it, and you attacking that joke from the position of intent and giving yourself permission to try different things to find what the best resolution is going to be. I don't think I've mentioned it yet in this class, but Keith and I have probably heard this before. One of the things that I really find interesting for really good and experienced comedians, that they'll use an open mic to like try and find the best word in a joke, and maybe even go to the mic and tell that joke 4 or 5 times in a row at the same mic. And so the example I give is this really great comedian here from Vancouver named Kevin Banner, and he would go to these mics to try and figure out the best combinations of words. He's a heavy set dude, and he's like, no one would ever realize if I was rich, but there'd be signs. It'd be like, if I went to the strip club, I wouldn't be passing out, making it rain money, but I'd definitely be making it rain cold cuts. So here's some pastrami for my bitches. And so his open mic thing was, okay, what cold cut am I going to use? And then what familiar term is bitches best, my homies, you know, like whatever it would be. And so I heard him tell that joke one time, 6 times in a row at an open mic. And it was like salami for my homie, like it, and then it landed on pastrami for my bitches. And then the joke just lit after that. And so that's why I like what you're doing with this elevator joke. You have this interesting concept. You know, the fact is that they don't want to be in there with you. What's the get? Like, what's the out for you and what's the out for them? And so I thought it was pretty funny that you're taking in that direction, because I thought it was very visually funny to me. Get the 2 separate rows on Southwest is still very funny to me. It's a really subversive joke, and you don't have a lot of subversive jokes in your humor, but I found that was like really subtly subversive, and I thought that was really funny. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna make me do this? Well, fuck you, I'm gonna do that to prove that what you're saying is inane. You said, oh my God, in something. It was a reaction to something that you said. And I just thought, kind of like last week's phrase where I said, are you shitting me, or whatever that one was. The oh my God, I thought was like a really natural kind of moment for you again. So go back and watch this again. And that's another moment where it's like, oh, you just really hit on your own personality type in that moment. Like it was a real insight to who you are in that second. The fitted sheet, I thought was another good kind of like relatable thing. I think almost everyone in the audience would completely relate to that. I would be tempted maybe to play around with that a little bit. I thought it might be funny if you said it takes 2 people to fold instead of 2 hands. Because then it just creates like this exaggerated magnitude of how large these ginch were, you know? I like the construct that you created so that you could do the live streaming joke and all these other things. So you created this construct of, I'm going into a drugstore to get this dye, my beard dyed, which I'm clearly not doing. And here's all the funny ways that I could address the fact that I'm obviously not doing this. I did miss the versions of gray names in that joke, and I don't think you need to choose one or the other. That might be one where you can do both. You know, like, what were the names? It was like, what kind of person do you think I am? Do you think I think live streaming is the, you know, all that? So like you could do the names first, and then you could do the reflections on being older second, and that might create a little extra density of laughter in that one particular premise. Very energetic, like I said. There was a couple elements towards the end where you sort of shifted back to your original version of the jokes that didn't have as many of the authentic elements to them. So again, I think part and parcel of you've told those jokes so many times in that particular way, and over the first couple weeks of the class, you're like, oh yeah, maybe I can readdress them in a different manner to make them hypothetical, and then you just kind of fell into the habit of this is the way I always tell the joke. And so as you're making changes and editing your own material, you just have to be mindful of like, okay, there are going to be points where I can't rely on that kind of like muscle memory. I've chosen, I've made a change in this joke. So what do I do to remind myself that I made a change in this joke? So, but overall, really strong. And what I think the greatest part of this is we're looking at mostly new material relative to previous World Series events. And I know that you're working on this to be year 7 for a World Series event. So, but it's so true to you as a person. And I think that's the thing that resonates the strongest. I'm going to pass feedback to Ira first, but Ira, will ask you to like, pause the feedback for Scott for a second and just share with the class a couple of those I look like jokes that you restructured to get in to your set as opposed to just using the trope of I look like.
Oh, as to why I did it or what I did, because again, I have a whole lot of sort of I look like references throughout my material.
Mhm.
Vin Diesel's father, the whatever,
Minions.
some, guy who works with Minions. I don't even remember them all right now. Yeah, there's a Voldemort one. Yeah, because at this point in my mind, they're connected to the broke Jeff Bezos, right? There's that one too. Because they're all I've connected them each to jokes, as opposed to just having them out there by themselves. Which sort of gives me an extra laugh. As Jason was talking before about the sort of economy of words, or in my mind it's sort of it's laughs per minute, and if you can just toss something like that in on top of something, you've already got a nice concept that people are laughing at. You throw in something like that could laugh on top. You don't need to go through the setup. You just go straight to the punchline. It gives you more laughs per minute.
Yeah, and sometimes you also give ownership of the I look like to a third party. So for those of you not familiar with Ira's material, he has this long form joke about going to Planet Fitness and someone at the gym going, why is Vin Diesel's father sweating on the elliptical? So that's a reference that's a Ira doing a I look like Vin Diesel's father joke. But in the joke itself, a third party gets to make this observation, and it gives ownership to someone else. It doesn't make it feel like clunky and very trope driven. It just feels like this really fun, organic placement of this extra layer to the joke that is still in service of the joke, but you get to tell an I look like joke that's totally hidden, unexpected, and you get this kind of tension release laugh as a result. Okay, so and our thoughts first.
And then like I've got one where I talk about.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, where I talk about 23andMe, and I make fun of the fact that I look like a Jew that looks like a Nazi. Again, just very quick, adds on to it, gets them to keep laughing as we're going along.
Yeah, and doesn't rely on that phrase that is just going to ring alarm bells in a book, where it's like, I know I look like, or I look like, and so just if you come up with a joke like that, try and find a way to hide it, because there's two ways that you get laughs in humor is like you create jeopardy and pay it off, or you create tension and pay it off. And so the unexpected one is kind of like the jump scare, tension release, laughter. And so if you can add an extra layer within an established joke, as Ira said, you create more density of laughter, more laughs per minute. Plus also you highlight some of your writing skills that way as well.
Nice.
And so feedback this week for Scott?
Scott, one thought I had, a couple thoughts. One is you start off your set talking about how you were destined to be gay. And later on in your set, you talked about coming out to your mother. And have you ever thought about putting those together? So that you were destined to be gay, you're muted right now. So
I don't say I'm destined to be gay. I said I'm gay. I was destined to be a comedian.
Oh, destined to be a comedian. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, that's in which case, never mind.
I could have been destined to be gay.
Ira's going to work on his listening, understanding, and responding skills.
I never listen to Scott when he talks. Yeah. The other thought that I had, was where you got the dwarves doing 3-part harmony, and I'm not sure it's only 3-part harmony, but that's a separate issue. You then have construction site singing Hi Ho, and in my mind, the people at the construction site should be singing something else. And again, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it should be Backstreet Boys or like I Want It That Way or something that I think that can get a bigger laugh. Again, pop reference. The Hi Ho reference I think can come to, can be there too, but I think you can also go to the construction site with something else. And again, I don't know if it's going to be Backstreet Boys. I don't know if it's, another one of those boy band type things, but I think there's got to be a song there that's going to get you a bigger laugh than the Hi Ho.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Ira. Daniel, thoughts?
Yeah, Scott, great performance. Love the energy. So fun to watch you on stage or on your phone. So I guess 2 things was the elevator story. I like it. I'm wondering, because I know in the beginning of that story, you start with you as the audience. Look at the weight limit sign, and then you go into the story with the 2 guys. So maybe start the story and just playing around with it, but starting the story as you're already with the 2 guys, and they're the ones who are looking at the weight limit, and then you continue from there. Just the way to all put it back in the same story there. And then with the weight loss and the applause that you get, I really don't see people not applauding for weight loss as aggressively, or they would. I would be confused if I heard any applause for your weight loss, and then you say, "What? We didn't applaud you enough. We applauded you more for your age." So I'm wondering if you hear the same applause, maybe you could say, "No, don't applaud me the same way. I can control my weight. I can't control my age." Kind of like some little, punchline in case you hear the same type of applause or anything else like that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Daniel. Sometimes it's smart to pre-write a binary option based on the audience might react A or they might react B. And so then you have different ways to do it because then you don't sort of fall into the rote expectation. This happened at the main event in 2019 or 2018 where one of the performers had this thing like in the middle of their set, they're like, "What'd you say?" to the audience, and then riffed on what the audience said to them. But the audience never said anything.
Oh no!
He got no laughter on that punchline, and so when he said, "What'd you say?" all the judges were like, "No one said anything." so he like just went in his like general. Okay, I always do the joke this way, so I'm going to do the joke this way, and it just was so out of place. It was so fun. To me, it was funny, but it was just devastating. It probably cost the guy the chance to win the whole thing. I know we're going a little bit longer here, but we had the discussion and kind of wrapped in some of the thematic discussion into Scott's feedback. So, Keith, thoughts for Scott?
Yeah, so Scott, on the elevator, I think what Daniel was saying is great. I think you just start with they're already in and they look up, and then a quick joke, something. I hope you don't weigh more than 5 pounds. Or as they ran away, did I say, would you just hold my balls and we'll be okay? Like, something. Yeah, so no, good, very vibrant. So awesome. Nice. You're great.
Are you wearing your comedy feedback t-shirt today, Keith?
I sure am.
Nice, thank bud. Dylan, thoughts?
Yeah, I actually liked the 3 like little lines that you had about the beard dye, with the equating it to streaming and then live streaming, and I think it's good to keep those because I think it will help that joke hit with a younger audience as well. So if you want to do it where you keep like what Jason suggested, you keep the names of the beard dyes and those, I think that works also. But I did think those were good, and I would look to keep those. And yeah, the only other suggestion I had was what Daniel brought up with be careful with like expecting how the audience is going to react to a certain part of your joke, because like Daniel said, it would be kind of surprising if they didn't applaud for the weight loss. That's something that I think most audiences would applaud for. So just don't get into a trap where a joke hinges on that happening.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, that's just like a quick rewrite. I often say in these classes that every sort of obstacle that you might face is just a writing exercise in disguise. And so in that moment, then maybe you're like, oh, I kind of was hoping for more applause for this than the weight loss thing, or vice versa. Like give yourself leeway. So as Dylan said and Daniel alluded to, you're not painting yourself in a corner with what you've pre-written for that particular moment on stage.
I love Daniel's suggestion. I can control my weight, but not my age. I like that. I love that. I really like that. I'm gonna try that this week. I'm going to do a show. I'm gonna try. I like that.
There is one way to control your age, but it's very, very dark.
Cold.
On to the next, David.
So I have MS. I call it brain cooties sometimes. Never rarely multiple sclerosis, because that's hard to say. Especially if you have multiple sclerosis. So I was saying all this, and I saw this guy looking at me, and I saw his wheels turning. And then out of nowhere, he says, MS, like monkey scrotum. I fired that doctor. I hate doctors. I'll give you an example. So I went into a doctor, and for a long time, MS Society was like, you need to take someone into your appointments. I get it. So I ended up taking my wife. First of all, fuck you, because you didn't think I'd get married. Get out of here. I have MS. I'm not a fucking retard. Not kind of retard. Kind of a retard. It's not. So I go into this doctor, and when I'm going in, there's a guy that's a quadriplegic, and he's in trouble. You can see, and it bothers me because one day that'll be me. I don't know, but I hate it. So anyway, that's not the funny part. So I go into the doctor because I was having an attack. When I haven't had an attack, I don't anymore. That's a whole nother story. So, and I brought my wife with me. So immediately he goes, well, you know what I'll give you? I'll give you an IV and I'll give you a pill. Okay. Then he says, I'll be back. He leaves. He comes back and he says, I'm going to give you one of the two. And my wife says, don't punch him. I wish I didn't bring you. Get out. That's not what we talked about. What the fuck? Which is crazy. So eventually he says, or I tell him, no, you're going to give them both to me, because I record all my conversations and I will go show the quadriplegic. And he freaks out and he's like, okay, I'll give them both to you. No shit, you'll give them both. Fuck off. Because he says to me, what medical school did you go to? And I never wanted to punch a man so bad in my life. So my wife was actually right anyway. So I've had MS for 30 years, but doctors couldn't and can't tell me why I have it. So I like to think that I had an ancestor that was a fucking dick, and now I have monkey scrotum. So I'm originally from Wyoming. So Wyoming was crazy. I got drunk for the first time. I was the last one of my friends. I was 8. But I was the guy of the group. Everybody followed me. I had great hair. It was awesome. I had long hair in the back. Well, at the time, nobody said it, but it was a mullet. So then I moved from Wyoming, and I I go blank every once in a while. So I moved to Las Vegas, and it didn't take long, and they gave me a nickname. They all called me white trash. There are a lot of differences between the two states. I'll tell you the biggest one. In Wyoming, it snows 7 months of the year, and the snow ends up on the ground. In Nevada, it snows all year long, but the snow ends up people's noses. So I feel like we bonded over this little session. Thank you. So I'll tell you the first time I had sex. I feel like we're friends. So I'm making out with my girlfriend, and pretty soon I pull out a condom. And that didn't like, ta-da. But as soon as I pulled it out, she's like, "You think I'm a whore?" It's like, "No, babe. I think you'd be a terrible mother." Anyway, thank you.
Nice job, bud. Just to give a heads up to everyone in the class, Keith and I already did our one-on-one session that is included in the class. We ended up talking earlier this week, and one of the things we were talking about is sort of the differentiation between like being full-on storyteller and maybe coming up with a showcase set. And so this particular one from the Idiot Box, I think it is, kind of felt a little bit like it was a combination of the two. It sort of like was storytelling at the beginning and then had some dense laughs towards the end. And so one of the things I think as you're moving forward to come up with your own showcase set is like, okay, if I'm going to choose what my 5 best are for right now, even if they're 5 new minutes, need to like work on the stuff that's really dense in laughter. And then I can build out from that when I'm given the opportunities to have longer stage time, like half an hour shows with bar comedy, or if you go feature on the road or something like that. So I thought that this was fun. And one of the best parts of this particular video for me is it really captured how immediately engaging you are with the crowd and just how much they love you and want to listen to your stories, because you got a lot more license there and still got really good pops of laughter, even though it might not have been the most densely populated punch tag material, just because you were open and honest and vulnerable and talking about yourself in a funny way. To me, you're one of the most naturally funny people that I've met. You don't take life too seriously. You don't take yourself too seriously, but you can get riled up and you can get angry sometimes, and it expresses itself mostly in a funny way. And so I thought that this set was a really good example of that. And you bringing in the story of going to the doctor and bringing your wife so that she made sure that you weren't punching the doctor, but you probably bought her in the first place so that she would do that. So, like, she would make sure you didn't punch the doctor. So you're probably kind of protecting yourself by bringing her, this kind of thing. So it was like this very meta story about you not wanting to beat up this doctor. But a really great lesson, I think, for everyone else in this class is you never know how much an audience is going to invest with you on a show-to-show basis. And so what probably happened here for you, Keith, is you probably didn't get as many jokes in as you thought you would, because you're getting bigger and longer applause breaks than you anticipated when you're writing your set. And so I think that that's a really good lesson to everyone else in the class. And as I talked about briefly in week 1, is like, it might make most sense to write a 4.5 minute set if you're doing 5, and a 6.5 minute set if you're doing 7, because you want to give yourself this opportunity for the jokes to breathe and for you to get a larger response than even you would have anticipated. Because it's much easier as a comedian to stretch than it is to immediately edit on the fly, maybe drop your closer, maybe run out of time on stage, run the light, that kind of stuff. So if you budget for under, you give yourself a lot more wiggle room for if the audience is responding really well, like they did in this set. Don't punch them. I love the story of that. I just think it needs to be a little bit of a stronger joke, because right now it's living in a little bit of a family and friends zone. and you'd already kind of made fun of a previous doctor, and so we kind of already anticipate you might make fun of this doctor. So just the way the structure of the set was, like, I think we knew the direction this was going in. So I like the story. I just think it'd be a smart idea for you to maybe workshop some quicker punches to how that situation resolved in a way that's a lot more relatable to a group of strangers than it might be to the people that know you well, like myself and Aaron, David. And might just need to punch up some of the storytelling elements here. But in terms of like what you chose to share, I thought was very, very funny and open and honest, and really great storytelling. A little bit of a haphazard set construction. You even admitted on stage, like, oh, sometimes I go blank and I forget. Your intro into I moved away from Wyoming was totally fine. You didn't need to reset that. That's another lesson for comedians, for everyone in the classes. Sometimes you'll step on your own joke. Just power through. It's much more noticeable if you stop and reset the joke than if you just kind of roll with the punches of the joke and just continue with the flub that you made. And then if you have to later on, correct yourself. But if you stop and reset a joke, sometimes that can be really noticeable in the middle of a set. And then the very first time I saw you tell the first time I had sex joke, I lost it because it was such an unexpected punchline that, no, I think you'd make a terrible mother. I just thought that was just like so funny. And I'm really happy that you used it as a closer here in this set, because I think often that will probably just end up being the biggest laugh that you get of your current batch of material. And so I think it was a really good way to like leave the crowd just on a huge laugh, like we were talking about. Instead of saying, I got one more, I'm going to leave on this, just leave with a big laugh and say, hey, that's it for me. I've been Keith West, kind of thing, you know? So yeah, really strong overall, dude. Enjoyed it. And my suggestion would just to be find efficiencies in those stories, because they're all fun and interesting to listen to. Dylan, thoughts for Keith?
Yeah, so I agree with what Jason said on keeping I think you'd be a terrible mother joke as your closer. It's just a really good line, and I think it's going to hit with just like audiences all over the place. So I think that's definitely a good idea to keep that as the closer. Yeah, the only other note I have is when you were setting up the doctor joke, you kind of bounced around in the setup to it between the quadriplegic and your wife being there and then going into the doctor, and it got kind of it got a little confusing for the setup. It came around at the end, so I think it ended up not mattering. But I think just having, like, if you're going to introduce the quadriplegic and your wife and the doctor, have it just be three distinct parts of the setup, and don't bounce around to avoid like confusing the audience. So that way they're just on board right away, and then everything goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, that's strong. Thank you. I also realized that I forgot to say, because the doctor said, you're going to end up just like that guy. And he was talking about the quadriplegic. Yeah. You fucking prick. Anyway. But
cool. Yeah, and I think that'll just come with muscle memory. Like, so talked a little bit in the past during Scott's feedback is you don't want to rely too much on muscle memory, because then sometimes you say something you said 100 times when you actually meant to try a new wrinkle to it. But also for a joke like this, as you're working out, you're trying to figure out where's the funny of like, how can I incorporate a quadriplegic in a funny way? You know, like there's all these elements that you're really tiptoeing around. And once you start saying it more frequently and get a chance to do it on stage more often, I think it'll come second nature. But I think Dylan's point is really great. It's like trying to find 3 separate points of view in that joke and then target the funny of each of those points of view. Scott, thoughts?
I think I've told you this before, Keith. I love when you play around with MS with monkey scrotum. But I wrote down last week when you can even add to that, you know, like MS is multiple surprises or like motor skills. Nah. MS mostly sitting or like mostly stubborn. Because I think, especially the way because it's because you really are doing this self-deprecation. And I think you can have some more fun with that because it's one right after the other. And after getting to know you and hear you, I think that might be also good. Or even something with the mullet, because you said the mullet.
Right.
I think one of the reasons why I think you'd be a terrible mother hits so hard is that everybody loves you because you've been making fun of yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you finally turn the gun around, it's surprising but funny. Daniel, thoughts?
Yeah, great, Keith. That was the best set I've seen of yours so far. And yeah, monkey scrotum is just a funny phrase. I laugh every time I think about it. And I don't know if this would really be in your showcase, but probably as you expand on it, when you said about the, your last of your friends who get drunk, 8 years old, great joke. But then I was like, wait, I want to know more. Don't leave that. Don't leave that yet. I'm like, what did you drink to get drunk as an 8-year-old? Where did you get the beer? How many did it take? Why were you the last one? Who was the first one? How old were they? I was like, wait.
Bartles and James. Thanks for asking. So it's Bartles and James, but I like to say second grade more. I fucked up and said 8. But anyway, I like the second grade, and Ira hit on it. I was the last one of my friends. I was in second grade. Yeah.
That's funny either way. You should also, it couldn't hurt if you did a really childish mix with hard liquor, like Bartles and James and Red Kool-Aid or something, I heard some final thoughts for Keith.
Again, you looked really relaxed, confident on stage. So yeah, this was a real good performance. I really like the don't punch him, and I think you can do a lot more with that. I do, and the fact that you brought, I was wondering why you brought the quadriplegic up, because you mentioned you forgot the line that you can add out like that, which is useful. I also think that quadriplegic is a reasonable callback for things that people with MS shouldn't be able to say. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
all the diseases that for people who are having trouble talking they make them hard to pronounce for those people. So
yeah, this is funny.
They should just name all diseases off of the 27
right,
Yankees.
Babe
Ruth disease.
Right. The doctors are bricks. It makes you want to hit them. Yeah.
Right.
What is Babe Ruth disease? Is that just obesity?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's type 2 diabetes, I think.
I've never heard of Babe Ruth disease.
I've heard of Lou Gehrig's.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
Competing disease.
All right. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice job, Keith.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Dylan Michaels. It's not my real last name; it's a stage name that I use. My parents made me change my last name after they saw some of my stand-up, and they said, "Well, we don't want people to show up to our house and kill us," which I thought was very selfish. And they were like, "Well, when you lose your job, would you like to sleep in our basement or in Penn Station?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll change it a little bit." My parents actually were the first people to get me into stand-up. They sent me to a program for kids at the Gotham Comedy Club. And after that, I went to school. I studied math. I got a job in finance. And when I told them that I wanted to go back to stand-up and make it a career, they were like, "Well, we think it's a bad idea, but we love you and we'll support you." And then they saw me go back to the Gotham Comedy Club and do a Chinese accent. And then that love and support quickly turned to, how do we kill him and make it look like an accident? But, you become an anxious person when you lose the love and respect of your parents. And, I've brought that into other parts of my life. Like I'm dating now. I'm trying to date more. This is how fucked up dating is, though, now. I'm currently in love with a woman that is a lesbian and has a boyfriend. And I'm not either of those two things. But we still have sex, though, which I guess is good. I don't know. Like, on the one hand, I have constant fear and anxiety about the future. But on the other hand, that pussy is fire, dude. So is good pussy worth losing who you are as a person? I'm inclined to say yes. I was having fun. But, I'm an anxious guy when it comes to relationships. And she told me, she was like, "Well, I just want you to know before we have sex, this can never go beyond just having sex." And I was trying to be manly and stoic. And I was like, "Well, sweetheart, I'm a man. We don't have feelings." And then we had sex like 2 times, and I was like, "So you ever think you might want to have kids one day?" And she was like, "What did I say?" And I was like, whoa. I'm joking, obviously. Why would I want to build a future with someone I care about? That sounds gay. I would hate that. Please don't leave me alone again. But if you ever took advice from me, which I don't suggest, but if you ever did take advice from me, it would be don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. I asked her one time, I was like, hey, do you think if we met before you were in this open relationship and there wasn't an age gap and just things were different, do you think we could have been something together? And she looked at me and she was like, oh, no, you're just too stupid and immature. And I looked at her and I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. If I'm so stupid and immature, then why did I just sell my entire Adderall prescription to my nephew instead of crushing it up and snorting it on a Saturday, huh? Would a stupid and immature man be so entrepreneurial? I don't think so. So I basically won that one. But I'm trying to keep my options open. Like I went on a Hinge date with this French girl recently. And before we went out, I asked her, I was like, just to check, you're not a polyamorous lesbian that's going to make me fall in love and then move away for 5 months and make me want to kill myself, right? Which is an intense first question to ask. But she was cool. She was like, no. I'm a regular slut. Like, I'll probably cheat on you in the future, but you'll understand what happened. None of this wacky liberal stuff. So we went out. We went on a date. And it went great. And at the end of the date, she told me, she was like, hey, let's go back to my hotel room. And then I was like, hey, very nice. And then we got back to her hotel room and she started crying and talking about how she wants to kill herself. And I was like, well, my Borat impression is not that bad. Frankly, this is a bit of an overreaction. But that's real. We got back to her hotel room and she started crying and talking about how she was molested as a child and she was raped by her first boyfriend and that she wishes that she was dead and a ghost and she wished she wasn't even a ghost. She wished she never existed in the first place. And I was like, nice. So you ever think like you might want to have kids one day but I consoled her. I said, hey, I know you might not see it, but I think you're a great person. I had a fantastic time tonight. And I put her to sleep. And I said goodbye. And I never thought I'd hear from her again. And then she texted me the next morning. And she was like, hey, I just want you to know you really made me feel better about myself. And frankly, I deserve some goddamn head. Okay? I don't know who owes me head. Somebody owes me head. The United States government owes me head. I want to show up once a month to the DMV for my free head. Like, oh boy, head. I hope they don't use teeth this time. No, they're going to use teeth. They're going to use teeth every time.
Don't want any of that toothy ice head. I like this. I also like the fact that you, just like Scott and Daniel before, just self-recorded so you could incorporate some of the changes here. I like that you use your name off the beginning and have a bit of a branding of yourself that way. The program for kids in comedy made me curious in that moment. And I know that we're talking about efficiency and cutting down and trying to find more efficient jokes here. But that is a concept that I really would love to hear you play on a little bit. So maybe sacrificing some time later in one of the other jokes to get to tap into that really unique premise. As I mentioned with you when we did our one-on-one session, I've listened to a shitload of comedy, and anytime like a new premise presents itself, it just really, really interests me. And I could see a booker or a judge or a club owner being like, oh, that's really interesting. Like what happened in this class for kids, like program for kids at a stand-up club? Like, I think you could do hypothetical stuff that's really silly, but also like true stuff, or like, who are your classmates? What did your classmates go on to become? You know, like, to me, that just is such an interesting thing that right now is just living as a throwaway comment in this set that I think could really be kind of like mind for some material there, and maybe a couple extra laugh beats in there, because it just gets you thinking like, oh, that's a weird place to do like an after school care program at a stand-up comedy club, or whatever the circumstance happened to be. Like, even if it was like the gifted kids things, like, you want the gifted kids to be comedians, like, shouldn't they be like doctors, or like, shouldn't they be sent to STEM, not like a stand-up comedy club? So
it was not for gifted kids, I'll tell you that much.
But I just, it was so interesting that I wanted to hear a little bit more about it. So even if you end up not using that as part of the showcase set, I pin that and definitely figure out a way to talk more about that because it's really, really interesting. I thought you had a way potentially to do some mirror language humor with your parents loving and supporting you until they saw you, and now they just love you. Because then you're subtly telling the audience exactly what happened without saying it, and you get to use mirror language, which sometimes can work really well on stage. The I'm currently in love with joke, I like that joke. The constant fear and anxiety, I like that you dropped that early on there as a bit of a defining element of it. And the well, sweetheart, the immediate changes of you as a person after having sex, I thought that was really funny. And that sounds gay. After you use that phrase, that sounds gay, it feels to me that there's a spot there for you to make one more self-referential thing where, well, I didn't want to end up being gay. You know, I didn't expect this is how I'd feel, but I didn't want to be, you know, like if you're, maybe Scott can talk this more so that we're not treading on territory that sounds hateful.
Ira would say you're destined to be gay, Dylan.
Yeah, but to me, it just felt like if you're making that self-commentary on for yourself, explain it a little bit more. Like how that sounds gay. Well, then why is that negative? You know, so it gives you an area to play around with that phrasing there. I think to give one extra layer to your emotional state of mind in that moment. So I would be tempted to sell the start of her response to you into making it sound like she's being super supportive in that moment, that she's going to agree that you guys are destined to be together and have a couple and stuff. So like walk the audience down the path a little bit before you pull the rug out. So she's like, oh, sweetie, you know, like she should be like so enthusiastic in her response and then just be like, put the death nail in it. And I think just create a little bit of extra tension there. I don't think that comedy necessarily needs transition elements to get from a joke to another joke. There's ways to like organically get from a joke to another, or kind of narrative ways, writing techniques that you can use. And segues are a thing of 90s comedy. So you don't need a segue between the first joke and the second joke. But I wonder if there's a way that you can kind of get something a little bit more organic there. It's like, well, she clearly is committed to an open relationship. Maybe I should try it out. And that's how you got onto the hinge date thing. It just might be just this little soft way to get into it instead of it making it sound definitively like two stories, sort of like what we talked about in a one-on-one session. I feel like eventually that can just be one mega joke. You know, you know it's two jokes. I know it's two jokes, but the audience might just make it feel like a mega joke. Thanks, David. The aside in the Borat I thought was really funny. I thought this is the best that you had sold that. And I liked your choice to switch that line up to, do you want to have some kids one day? I thought that was a funny way to like double down on that phrase again. It's not a full callback, but I thought it was like a funny use of, okay, I'm going to make fun of myself in this scenario. And clearly she's not ready for this. But I'm just going to double that. Like, this is what happens to me all the time, no matter how bad the scenario is painted to me in my dating. And then because you remove the so no head thing, and now that just lives at the back end of the joke of as a triumphant and understanding male human, you're somehow owed this now. I think you should have some defining elements that let the audience know that you feel very proud and that you've done something really great here. So I feel as if I deserve head, like almost even say it that way. It's like, in that moment after she contacted me, I just felt proud that I was able to offer a safe and supportive environment for her. And it just felt great about myself. And it just made me think somebody owes me head, I think, you know, and get into that. So like my takeaway from this set is, there's a couple spots where, because of your personality type, you can oversell the beginning of the bit, the beginning of the joke, to create an extra tension. So this is one of those cases where you could oversell that you're proud that you had just been compassionate, and then you just have the most misogynist response to being compassionate. And I think that would like create something there. And then I oversell her at the start of her "you're too stupid and immature" thing. So just keep kind of like fooling the audience that you're like being this better man that your parents didn't see you as, and then prove to the audience what your parents saw, for them to support part of the love and support. But yeah, I really like the direction this is going, and this was the most cohesive those stories felt to me. I still think there's like ways to make it slightly more organic, but linkage. But yeah, strong job. Ira, thoughts?
So when you mentioned the Gotham Comedy Club program for kids, in my mind, I was thinking like the way the Soviets used to train little babies to become assassins.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it goes, but to me, there seems like there's a link there. And you do all this stuff about your parents and how proud they were and supportive and disappointed. Think about whether instead, when you're meeting these women, instead of saying, "Do you want to have kids?" go with, "You want to meet my parents." So connecting back to the parents over and over again.
Yeah.
It's a similar type of needy thing, but this way it may make it all feel more cohesive. Especially if your parents are disappointed in you, bringing back people who would be more of a disappointment to them, I think is consistent with the character. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Falsely inflate yourself by deflating everyone else around you.
Yeah.
Scott, thoughts? Thanks, Ira.
I think when you said change your name, maybe you say your parents will say.
One more thing. When you say the government owes you head, the thought popped into my mind that we need a national head reserve. So there's a whole collection of this just ready to be provided for people like you.
I like that. So I will say, though, I don't want to waste too much time, but I had 2 versions of the set this week, and I went with this one specifically because it had the part in the beginning with my name and my parents and how I changed it. The second version, I didn't do that, and I had more time at the end to explore the government owed head stuff. So I don't know. I might be able to find a way where I shorten everything enough to fit both of them in, but it's like a jam-packed set right now. So,
well, it's nice to have density in the material. So yeah, I think the first option is search for efficiencies in each of the jokes to see if you can tell them all, and then failing that, then start to throw some of the babies out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Scott, go ahead.
Also, I was saying, we said change your name. You could say your mother will say, or change your material, or we'll have to change our expectations. I think that might be a good play on words. And I know I love the head owed head. I was going a different direction, though, that maybe you get a dating card, and after every 6 dates they get stamped, you automatically get heads. 6 bad dates, you automatically get head because you get your card stamped already by everybody. I think that might be a good play also.
That's funny. I'm just thinking like a Fort Knox glory hole.
Well, but that would be for golden showers, though. That's the difference for Fort Knox.
Yeah, I guess. Daniel, thoughts?
Yeah. Great stuff, Lynn. I love the new intro with your name and your parents. One idea is whenever they said they don't want you to be killed, or like, if only, like, you take that as a compliment. And then, your personality, your demeanor, you really can live in the pauses and really just have that confidence in them. So I'll just keep doing that. Just keep on adding those pauses in between. Because it's funny. Just, the idea of you just being on stage, a little bit of quietness, the suspense, being like, I don't want to be perceived as gay. Please don't leave me. Something like that. So yeah, just keep it up. I like it.
Yeah, I enjoy your pacing and your cadence as well, Dylan. I think you have like a unique way of storytelling, which is fun to watch. Keith, thoughts?
Yeah, so Dylan, it's always funny. It's great to see. I like the little changes. So I need to tell you that the government promoted Scott to pay off the head. So nothing, Scott, nothing. Right. So yeah, no, it's good you've got things come together. It's great to see.
I did have one. So this is the one that I didn't submit for this week,
Sorry,
but I
Scott.
did have a bit at the end where it was we're waiting so long in the government line to get head that I just suggested it to the other guys that are there. We should just start giving each other head, and they flip out on me. So that could tie back to
Being
the
gay.
part in the other joke about
Right, yeah.
being afraid of being gay, but.
Yeah, or you could also play on other stuff as like, is the line shorter at the Department of Hand Jobs? You know, like,
Yeah. Longer, honestly.
Probably, yeah. So I
imagine.
think there's ways to like play around with that, and I think it's just as I mentioned in my feedback, like anytime that you've mentioned a new and interesting, fresh premise, I just like, okay, let's dig into that, you know.
Mhm.
And so it might be, maybe you compile the two jokes somehow. I don't know, like for efficiency's sake. They definitely do sound like two different sentiments right now.
Mhm.
But maybe there's a world in the future where they become a hybrid story, and that saves you so much time. Then you get to play around with the other stuff. It's just a potential writing exercise to task yourself with.
Yeah.
As a hybrid, the joke may not be as strong as the two individually, but it may, in service of like creating a stronger overall showcase set, it might work that way. Or maybe it is the first joke, and then you have the thought experiment of the second date. That just turns into a thought experiment. So it cuts down on all the exposition to it, and you just get to the payoffs at the end by like, oh, what were my expectations that I'd go and this would happen? So I don't know. I'm just kind of like spitballing here, but
Yeah.
there's ways to play around with either shortening both jokes or combining them in some format, just to give yourself a little bit more stage time to play around with some of those extra fresh ideas that you've brought to the table in the first 3 weeks here. So nice job, bud. I know you have to duck out early potentially.
Yeah,
so
I gotta head out now. Actually,
cool.
I'll see you guys all next week. I'll be on full time next week. So
for next week, try and submit the video for everybody in the class. Try and submit by Saturday so I can watch them and write notes. So then I don't have to do my feedback during the class, and we can have more time for Brian to talk.
okay,
Cool.
All right, sounds good. I'll see you guys next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, David, on to the next.
I spend a lot of time with my family. Means I don't have to write my own material. I actually have two sons. The one that I love and the vegan. And look, not everybody's a perfect parent. I get it. All right. I made a lot of mistakes. One thing is I raised my kids here in the Bay Area. And you Tampa people don't know this, but the rest of you see Bay Area parents with their kid on a leash, their dog in a stroller. That's not what I wanted for my kids. Like for me, the most important thing was that my kids are raised Jewish. Their mother, on the other hand, she grew up in a Methodist family in Silicon Valley, so naturally she wanted them to be happy. And you can't have both. That's not the way it works. I talk to a lot of rabbis. Rabbis go, no, we're not allowed to be happy. It's not the way. It's not our people. You know, my grandfather was never happy. My father was never happy. No son of mine is going to be happy. It's not the way it works. Last weekend, my mom came up to Northern California. My mom, by the way, is going to be turning 90 this year. The age when all Jews moved to either Florida or Arizona. Because it's God's will. Like 9 years ago, she turned 80 and she moved to one of these senior communities outside Phoenix. They spend all their time trading racist stories and conspiracy theories. And she loves it. She loves it. She's found her people. And look, it's basically, it's like a day camp. But when she came up here this past weekend, because her husband Bob hasn't been feeling well, and she's planning, once Bob dies, to move here to Northern California so she can be a burden on us. Now, and the thing is, she's looking for this.
a community like the one she has right now, which is basically just a sleepaway camp for seniors, is they have activities, all sorts of activities. One of the things that she did all summer was she was taking this exercise dance class. And they spent the entire summer learning the choreography to Michael Jackson's Thriller, right? So they can perform it for everybody on Halloween. Now, I don't know who thought it was a good idea to dress the almost dead up as the recently dead, or who thought it might be fun to teach people who can't hear how to dance. But it was an amazing experience because they practiced for months out in this open space. And then they put them in a confined space like this with walls. So all they're doing, and my mother you can see my mother in the video, and she's turning, she's hitting the wall and bouncing off of it, which is the kind of thing a real zombie would do, right? That's the kind of thing you see from zombies and Roombas. And the thing is, I wasn't there at the time, but they took a video of it. And she was so excited and so happy that she spent the next 4 weeks trying to email me the video of the dance. So I have 40 emails that say, I think I've attached a video. How do you like it? And at the end of 4 weeks, I hopped on a plane and I flew down to Phoenix so I could see the video. And it's absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. So yeah, we showed her around a couple of places here, and we'll see what she finds. I think it's like I know now because like my mother's living that long. I've got longevity in my genes, so I got to take good care of myself so I can last for a while. And it gets tough because I'm at an age right now where I get hurt doing nothing. No, like about a year ago, I hurt my knee playing soccer in a dream. And the thing is, the whole world knows when you hit a certain age that your body's falling apart. I turned 64 a couple weeks ago, and on that day, all of my online ads switched to Medicare and pickleball. That's it. It's as if the internet knows one, maybe two things about you, and that's all they're going to be focusing on all the time. Because before that, they knew I was originally from New Jersey and I liked live entertainment. So I would get ads for bands that are going around. Come see Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band. Come see Bruce before you or he is dead. But now it's like time is running out. Sign up for Medicare now before you're dead. And I don't know what the pickleball is about. I think they've decided that I need to replace whatever personality I have with a pickleball person. And the thing is, look, I will admit, I have tried playing pickleball. And my 35-year-old son loves pickleball. He plays all the time. For him, it's almost a sport. Now, the thing is, for me, I've played with some older people, and I found the best part about pickleball is making old people fall over and hurt themselves. It's absolutely amazing. So I'm
Nice. I wasn't expecting us to be done. I was writing notes.
I was like, whoa.
I was actually Googling the world pickleball champion because that could be a fun like specificity reference that you could have in your set. Nice job. Audio so much better this week, so I could hear everything. I like how you've kind of created this hybrid joke off the top because as Keith and David and I know, I have two sons, the one I love, and the vegan used to be I have two sons, the one I love, and the spare. And then you also went into a vegan story afterwards. So now you're kind of creating a hybrid of introductions so that you can get straight into the vegan aspects of those jokes. So I thought that was a clever way to kind of create a combined intro for that joke. And I really like the path that you took for the Jewish or happy. I know that that's an older joke. That portion of the joke is a little bit older, but that's a fun concept for you to explore, like the difference between being Jewish and being happy. So that's a bit of a construct. And I know that you're looking for efficiencies in some of this stuff, but that's an area that you could play around with and give kind of like compare and contrast examples of what would be a Jewish affectation versus the happy affectation of the same thing. And I really liked kind of the laundry list that you explained, that my grandfather wasn't happy. My father wasn't happy. No kid of mine is going to be happy. But it might also be fun for you to tell the audience why they weren't happy. So I know that the underlying condition, if that's how we're going to frame it, is the fact that they're Jewish, but it might also be fun to have like some specific elements in there of what led to them having a lack of happiness. And then the transition into your mom being 90. And I like the idea that they have to choose Florida or Arizona. But again, another kind of like contrary options, like what would be the pluses and minuses of going to those two might be an interesting thing to potentially explore to give you slightly more density of laughter in the setup to that joke. So obviously Arizona, you have that other joke that you used to tell. It was like, historically hasn't gone well for my people in the desert. And so then maybe you can have the contrast of like what Florida as a retiree would have to offer. It was the home of the 2025 World Pickleball Championships, according to Google. And then just a few other like housekeeping things to transition a few of the references that you make from the family and friends realm to the group of strangers. I think just because you're so intimately aware, obviously, with your own family, that you've made the presumption that people understand that Bob is not your dad, and because you announce him as your mom's husband. But I think it might be interesting to just have like one little layer of explanation there as a caveat, so that you don't have the idiots in the audience like me going, okay, but then I guess that isn't his dad, who said it would never be happy. So it might be interesting, because then you could also maybe play around with like when she got remarried, how she got remarried. So there might be some flavor that you can add in there. I love the 90-year-old dance class. That's just a very funny visual. And then you take it kind of to the nth degree of them just bumping into shit. I would be tempted to underscore again the Thriller video that has the zombies in it when you do the wall portion of that story, because you do mention Michael Jackson early on, but then you're kind of relying on a lot of heavy lifting for people to remember the Michael Jackson reference, then get to the second layer of Thriller being the most famous video that has zombies in it, and then them acting like zombies. So there's times to be subtle and there's times to be explicit. And so I think this time when you get back to her bumping into the wall, you could play it subtly at first, and then when you do the explanation, you could very much hammer home that this was as close as you could get to a recreation of the Thriller video, I guess, so that you'd remind the audience of the reference that you had. It also might be interesting to add a little bit of character at the beginning of your mom's dancing again for the first time in X number of years, and then look at when she first learned to dance. She learned and then I Googled what were the popular dances in the 1940s, which would probably be about when your mom would start dancing. And it was like the jitterbug. And I'm like, that's just such a funny word. So it's like, they're trying to teach someone who grew up on the jitterbug how to dance like Michael Jackson. Could be just a funny play somehow there. The 4 weeks trying to email an attachment, that is so funny. And then again, so I flew to Phoenix so I could watch the video. Again, subtle payoff. I think do the subtle payoff and then may explicitly just say, yeah, it just was quicker that way. Thank you, David. I see that. Longevity in my genes. I know that you're a big sports fan, big sports guy. Kind of wish the Cubs didn't win the World Series, because then you could have a joke there. It's like, so it's a good thing that I'm a Cubs fan. I have longevity in my genes. I might get to see them actually win. But I wonder if there's like the another thing that you can do there to reference, like, good thing you're going to last forever because one of your teams might finally win one of the championships. Although you tend to cheer for winners. So Big Yankees fan, right?
See the Leafs win the cup?
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, or any Canadian team. So on the 64th birthday, my ads changed from this to that. I thought was funny. I like the Bon Jovi reference. I like the Bruce Springsteen reference. The only potential accidentally contrary element that you made there was when Facebook advertised to you pre-age 64, when you're young and vibrant, that you want to watch Bruce before he or you dies. Facebook doesn't know you're old yet because you haven't turned 64. So I would just be emphatic. Come see Bruce before he dies. And then you get to say that. And then next thing you know, they're like, do this before I die. So I think you just want, in this fantastical world that you live in, where you immediately had this change on 64, at 63, 364 days, they would have still thought that you were young. So you're not dying soon. Bruce is dying soon, but you aren't. And then Federico Skarsgård won the pickleball world championship in 2025. so like that could be, I just think like non sequitur references like that can be very funny at times, where if you talk about pickleball and like next thing you know, and I'm getting, pictures of Federico Skarsgård, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Turns out he was the 2025 pickleball world champion, So I just love specifically you, because sometimes when you get into like the nitty gritty of a story and you have like very specific references in it, that just really adds to the gravity of it. And I just find it really funny. So nice job, bud. And I really like the changes that you've incorporated here to your mom's story and you turning 64 story. Keith, thoughts?
Yeah, so everything is funny. You're funny, but what made me laugh this time was you talking about the older people playing pickleball and falling down, because that's funny to me. I don't know. Well, maybe because I fall down, but I don't know. It's funny. It's always gonna be funny. So anyway, great job.
Nice. Thanks, Keith. Daniel, thoughts?
Yeah, right, Ira. I really like like you said, the dance, the thriller, and the open field zombies. I just feel like there's so much you can allow us to be in that moment, because it's just so funny to think about it. And if you can add more visuals and let us be in that moment for just a few seconds longer, I would like that, because it was fun.
Yeah, that's a really good visual joke, because most people get that reference, and so it's really fun. Scott, thoughts?
As you know, Ira, your knee joke is my favorite joke. I love that. I did it in a dream. I still love that joke. But I was also thinking that maybe pickleball is exercise that doesn't trigger a life alert. That's why they're sending it to you now, because you can play without that. And of course, I love the Jewish stuff. You can almost say like, Jews aren't happy because it's only temporary until they see what the cost is. Something to play around with that, but I love your stuff. It's great. It's always great. 100%.
I love the idea of like you being sold a sport where your heart rate doesn't go above 72. I think that's really funny. Yeah. So that's a good suggestion, Scott. That's funny. Yeah. Nice job, bud. Cool. All right. And then I guess on to Daniel, I think, if my memory serves here. Yeah. Cool.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Quintero. Glad to be back. I sometimes dress like a magician, but my only trick is making my confidence disappear. I had a really heavy lisp growing up. I hated words that had the letters E and H in them, which was fitting because I had a crush on a girl named Heather. I'd always be like, "Hi, Heather." And when I was ready to ask her out, my lisp betrayed me. I said, "Hi, Hitler." She didn't like it. I thought doing tongue twisters would help, but they just made me angry. Like, Sally selling seashells by the seashore is literally the worst place that Sally should be selling seashells. I mean, like, you're already there. Like, didn't Sally study scarcity? I bet you Sally is short selling to shareholders with their seashell syndicate. Sally sucks. I never got to date Hitler. Happy to be here. I love smiling. I can't help it. I love life. Also, I don't have good cheekbones. I think smiling is the best way to keep my face up. Structural support. I mean, I don't know. It's not that I'm always happy. I'm just holding it together. But because I smile a lot, people called me the nice guy. And by people, I mean girls. Yeah. I wasn't a red flag. I was a white flag. I tried to get into a fight once, though, to like remove that stigma. Yeah, I challenged my best friend at lunch to a fight. So then we go to the courtyard. He punches me. That was the end of my fight. My initials are DQ. I am the Dairy Queen of San Antonio, Texas. Talk about soft. It was still better than my other nickname, the Crispy Lispy. I grew up in a trailer in Poteet, Texas, a small town in the country. In this trailer, there were 2 rules. 1, love God. 2, do not throw toilet paper in the toilet. God forgives. The septic tank does not.
Right.
Yeah, one time I almost burned my house down. I was sitting on the toilet bored when I found a box of matches under the sink for the stink. So I grabbed a box of matches and I started lighting them. I light a match, I laugh, and I throw this lit match in the trash can that is full of toilet paper.
Oh no.
And I do it again. I grab a match, I light it, I laugh, I throw, I grab, I light, I laugh, I throw, I grab, I light, and laugh, I throw, and then, oh no, fire. Who would have done that? You ever smell dirty toilet paper on fire? It actually smells better. Yeah, so for the first few seconds, I pull a Dairy Queen, I freeze. But then I run out with my pants down, wobbling to the kitchen, yelling, "Fire! Fire!" And my mom looks at me and she's like, "What's wrong, mijo? Did you eat too many jalapenos?" I was such a scared little kid. I prayed right after. God washed away all my sins, but the septic tank kept the records. Yeah, I'm really proud of my Hispanic heritage, though. I have all the Spanish flair, but none of the fluency. Everyone's on Spanish 5G in my family, and here I am, still on Windows Hola 95. But I said my wedding vows in Spanish. I hope I'm married. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I said yes to, but I said sí very confidently. I am Daniel Quintero. Thank you, and arriba. Yeah, he was a great laugher. One of those guys that makes you like, whoa, okay. I gotta slow down.
That's funny. A couple thoughts that I have here regarding this set. I really enjoyed it. You're such a really captivating storyteller, and the fact that you lean into like real life experiences just make it so uniquely yours and unliftable. You know, like that's one of the great things about being able to tell stories that are true to you and your own experience is that no one else can steal them. So the fresh premises that you come up with are going to be yours and uniquely yours. No one's going to take them away from you, and it can help separate you from the pack. And one of the things that you want to do when you're using a submission video or doing a live audition or at a contest or a festival, you want to try and maybe create like a bit of a signature bit or something that allows the viewer to get to know you and the personality that you are. And because then off stage, it's easier to engage in conversation with them or remind them like, hey, it was the kid who was like, hey, mijo, did too many jalapenos? That's my joke, you know, and then immediately they're like, oh yeah, I liked your set kind of thing. So for me, I really like that part of your storytelling, that it's so deeply engrossed in your day-to-day experiences. I feel as if, especially compared to when the first video I saw of yours and when we did our one-on-one sessions, I'm so super proud of the fact that you've taken it upon yourself to like really embrace the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to lean into getting away from the comfort zone, which for me was like telling these jokes that I knew would work, but were kind of like based on false premises and
Yeah.
didn't really let people as deeply in to know me as well. And then now you're just like unabashedly talking about yourself. I think that's really great. I thought the most interesting phrase that you said in the entire set, even though it wasn't a joke, was I grew up in a trailer in a small town, and then said what the small town was. I might potentially, I know that leads into like two kind of stories that led into your closer, but I would potentially be tempted to like just start your set with that. Like it's such an interesting insight into your life and how you grew up. And also chronologically, you get to talk about when you're young. And then maybe when you're talking about you're young and you have these moments of anxiety or where you screwed up or like your mom kind of sort of made fun of you, it lets us as an audience know maybe where some of these insecurities came from. So if you start off with the trailer story and do the septic story and the jalapeno story, and then you get to do the fun rant of I grab, I light, I laugh, I throw, I grab, I light, I laugh, I throw, which was really funny for you to say that 3 or 4 or 5 times quickly in succession. Then now all of a sudden we get to know who you are and then maybe understand now why you had more insecurities leading into high school. And so it may be a joke that can give insight. And then you kind of like pull it all back in and tell the audience later on, well, I actually ended up getting married to you forgot to say Puerto Rican woman. So then why you did your vows in Spanish kind of was a little bit out of context for us today's set. But you pull it back and like, well, but things have worked out great for me. You know, I recently got married, beautiful woman from Puerto Rico. We exchanged our vows in Spanish. And then you could be like, I think I'm married, you know, like I very emphatically said yes to something, you know. And so I think if you kind of like just pulled the grew up in a trailer all the way to I was a scared little kid, and then did the high school story, then the seashell story. The one thing that I would be interested as like a button to the seashell story, I know that you do it as a riff and talk about the economics of it, but maybe at the very end you should say explicitly what she should have been selling. Like what would have made more sense for her to sell in that moment was whatever. And then maybe it's not a word that's hard for you to say. So that it subtly implies that the whole tongue twister wasn't worth it because Sally should have just been selling, you know, glass ornaments or something. That's easy for you to say. So I thought your enunciation on the Heil Hitler was much, much better. I was a little bit curious why you challenged your best friend to a fight. Like, was it a thing to allow both of you guys to pretend that you were alpha males? So at least one of you would look good to girls. So like, the motivation of why it was your best friend that you chose to fight was interesting to me. If you didn't mention best friend, then it didn't matter. Like I decided to get in a fight one day to prove my manliness, but then because it was your best friend, it was like, why are you fighting your best friend? You know, so that was like just a ribbon on the bow that I kind of wanted tied off. I like the Crispy Lispy as the previous name. Proud of your Hispanic heritage. And then wrap it up. I like wrapping it up with I think I'm married. I think that's just
fun, that's a new ending. Yeah.
So for me, I would be tempted to tell the trailer story right off the top.
Okay.
Then lean into high school wasn't much better. And then you get to tell the insecurities of high school, and then the speech therapy joke, and then you can wrap it back into. But life has turned out great for me. I recently got married to this beautiful woman from Puerto Rico, you know, and then you can talk about exchanging the vows in Spanish, and then thinking maybe I got married. So I think all the same jokes, but maybe just slightly different order to give the audience a little bit more immediate insight into you and where you're from and some of the circumstances that led to developing the person that we get to see on stage.
That's so cool.
Point of view.
Thank you. I used to have the fire story at the top, but it was off a different theme of miscommunication and not of confidence. So and it was hard for me to connect the rest of it. So I'm going to try that. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Keith, thoughts?
Yeah, so Daniel, you're funny. You seem very calm this time. So that was great. You've got a lot of funny things. I like what Jason was saying about throwing out who you were by talking about from the trailer in a small town. I like that. I really do. But you could go a lot of different ways. But I like what you're doing now. Just tighten it up. So that was it. Good job.
Nice. And I just before I pass on to the next person for feedback, I love the idea that you did a Zoom mic. I know that they're not great for the confidence, or they're not great for like, but what they are really great for is getting an understanding of the timing that you need.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're a good mechanism to practice sets leading into a competition if you don't have the chance to get as much stage time as you want. So it was cool to see you do that. Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love that you can see you're definitely more calm and more polished. I think you could even do a callback when you say, think I got married, or say, thank God I practiced those tongue twisters. That's how I know I got married. A little play on words of you read your tongue twister. But I do like where you're going with it. It's fun watching you really grow with this. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. And Ira, some final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'd like to see you reference another tongue twister early before you get to the whole Sally sells sheets, so you can talk about one tongue twister you don't like a little, and that one you don't like a lot. And I do like Jason's idea of talking about other things Sally can sell, whether it's timeshares down the seashore, or if you can make it all S's, that'd be great. But yeah.
Second condos.
Slurpees.
Slurpees would be great.
Sounds like Slurpees on the seaside.
Passion fruit Slurpees. Yeah, nice job, bud. And like I said, I really like the direction that you're going in here. This feels a lot more raw from a personal point of view. And I think that that's really beneficial on stage because it creates engagement. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of my feedback, it's so uniquely you that even though you're touching on elements of insecurity, being anxious, growing up Hispanic, those sorts of things, which could be universal topics, the stories are so uniquely tied into you that I think they're great. So nice job, bud.
Thanks.
Yeah. As I was, again, apologies for all of the bad habits you guys are going to now see for the rest of your lives when you go to comedy shows. I was mentioning to Dylan, if you guys could email in your videos by Saturday, then that way I'll be able to write some notes and email you my notes before the class even starts. So you'll have my feedback before you even hear Brian's. And I'm super stoked to have him join us. He's, I don't know how familiar you guys are with his acting or his performing, but he's very, very funny. He headlined at the Comedy Mix when I worked there, and we became really quick buddies. And I've seen him, if our paths have ever overlapped, he played a lot at in Vegas at the Laugh Factory and at Brad Garrett's club. And so I've seen him perform out there a few times and stuff. And so I'm really stoked that he's going to be joining us. He's with no disrespect whatsoever to any of our previous guest mentors. This is a guy who's like on a career-wise another level, someone who's got 100 IMDb credits and has been a national touring headliner for 30 years, and he's also just funny and silly, so he'll have some different insights that I'll have for feedback for you guys, and he'll probably lean into more of the funny, silly elements that I think are really great ways to capture engagement with audience members.
Jason, you brought up that he has MS. Is he out talking about that, or that's why I didn't? Because some people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah,
so I didn't bring it up. All right, I was going to reach out to him, but I thought I would wait.
Yeah, I don't know if he talks about it on stage that much. Okay. And it's a relatively recent diagnosis, I think, sometime during COVID. So I'm not sure how.
Yeah, generally people don't. So, yeah, good thing I didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
Well, reach out to him because of that.
He might bring it up while providing feedback to you, because I don't think you'll have any film sets that don't mention that you have MS. So it might be something that he just organically talks about. But I'm looking forward to that, and it's really cool that he agreed to jump on board with us. So cool, awesome,
so
guys.
I have a question for you. So you said everyone says it's better if you talk about something 3 different ways, or not 3 different, but you talk about things. Is that a word, or is that an idea? What would that be to bring up to show that I can work? I don't know. That didn't make any sense. in my head.
Are you talking about when Dylan was saying that it's interesting you talked about the quadriplegic, interesting you talked about the doctor, interesting you talked about your wife?
I'm saying, so it's good to show once on your 5 minutes that you can work different ways. What can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so I think maybe what you're referencing is that I personally think in a showcase set, you should be as efficient as possible in almost all of your jokes, but then maybe choose one joke that you expand and give an insight into your ability to write long form jokes. So is that kind of what you're talking about, Keith?
I think so.
Yeah. So in that case, then it would be a matter of choosing one of the jokes that you're going to include in your showcase set, whether it's your karma for having MS. And in today's set, you didn't go down the path of like talking about both your parents are royalty and that kind of stuff. So that might be the type of joke where you can expand it and say, okay, the quick and easy joke would have just been, I have MS. It's probably karma for having a shitty relative at some point. But then when you expand on who the relatives were, why they were shitty, and you also incorporate extra laughs in it, that's an example of expanding one of the jokes, one of the concepts that you bring to the table. So the benefit of that as a comedian in a showcase set is now a booker or an experienced judge or viewer of submission videos can be like, okay, if Keith or Daniel or Dylan or Ira or Scott can expand this one concept on one joke out of, let's say, 8 that they told over this 5-minute set, I can probably trust that the other 7 jokes also have an expanded version of some sort. So now that gives you a little bit of a higher level of comfort in offering additional stage time to someone. Because if all the jokes are the same style, then you're like, oh, maybe that's the only style they know how to tell, or they're all the same length, that sort of thing. Then there's that human nature element of maybe not thinking that this particular comedian has the ability to hold attention for 25 minutes, which would sort of be the next stage that you'd be booked for.
So it's more of expand the joke, not say something different three ways. It's more the expand the joke.
Yeah, I think it's more the expand the joke. I mean, there's the rule of 3 in comedy, which I'm not a massive fan of. I know why it works, but I'm not completely married to that as a writing concept, because I think sometimes if you fall into the habit of those trope writing techniques, then that can also be slightly detrimental when someone's watching your video. Be like, oh, well, this person clearly learned comedy in a comedy class, and they're doing like all these comedy class elements of writing, as opposed to going up on stage and just talking about your life in a really funny way. And I think a great example of that for yourself, Keith, is this particular video. Like, I don't think if you watch the video you submitted this week, you'd be like, oh, this is my absolute best performance. But I think you would easily be able to say, oh, this is the highest level of engagement that I created with an audience. They jumped on board with me. They knew that I was honest and authentic here. Some of these stories were short, some of these stories were long, but they were willing to listen to all of them because they were interesting. They came from me. And that's not something that you would be taught in a comedy class where it's like you have to do the rule of 3, 2 wrongs and a right kind of thing, or the 2 obvious and the absurd. So don't get too married to those concepts where you might hear kind of in the scene that, oh, you need to have this style of joke or you need to do this writing technique, because most of those writing techniques are in place on purpose for people new to the craft, because it's a template for them to learn how to write jokes. But once they learn how to write a joke that makes sense for them to tell, you can be a little bit more free form in the style and the structure of the jokes that you tell. A really great example of that is, Keith, I don't remember if you were in a class with Lynn Hardick, but she took a class with at McCurdy's in Sarasota, and basically the first class was take a street joke, then insert your personal experiences into the street joke, but then keep the structure of the street joke. And part of the reason for that as a writing exercise is to learn the dynamics of setup, punchline, tag.
Right.
But the problem is if all the jokes you ever write sound like they're street jokes, then bookers are going to think you're just telling street jokes. So it's an important mechanism to learn the craft of writing, But once you become an experienced comedian, you sort of need to develop your own writing style and start to explore, okay, am I a wordsmith? Do I do puns? Am I silly? Am I smart? Do I try and combine the two? Do I tell long form stories? Do I tell short form stories? How personal am I going to get? And none of those things are the subset of use the rule of three, use callback, like all these things that you would hear in a comedy writing class, because most of those principles are there as basic templates for brand new comedians. But as you get more experience, you kind of really need to lean into figuring out what makes sense for you to say on stage in a funny way that's going to engage the audience. So it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I don't think any comedy class teacher, like say a Jerry Corley or something, would say the way that you structured your set that you submitted for this week's class would be the proper way to structure a set when you're first learning comedy. But through your 4 or 5 years of experience, you know that audiences are going to listen to stories from you because you have interesting, weird, unique things to say on stage. And every now and then you super surprise them with a punchline out of left field, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question that you asked, but don't rely too heavily on these kind of template styles of writing comedy.
Right.
Rely more on your gut instincts of being able to make people laugh.
Right. Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Sweet, man.
You answered a lot of it, but anyway, I'll stop talking.
We'll figure it out over a rib one day. We'll go get 2 ribs.
Do. A giant rib.
Scott, are you in LA?
I'm in LA, yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just.
Are you really, Scott?
What?
Are you really in LA? I didn't know that.
I live just north of LA. Yeah, I'll be in Oakland though this week.
No shit. Oh, look at this.
Which is when I'm going to Modesto just to be safe. Yeah.
Because he's want to be around me.
I like that. Modesto or Stockton are where you go to be safe. That's a solid point. It's a regional joke, but it's very, very funny. I just mentioned that because I'm going to be in Vegas most of March. So I don't know if there's going to be a point where I get near where you're going. I might go across to San Diego and visit Jim Gallagher. So if I'm anywhere near you, I'll send a text and see if.
No, I mean, in March, I think I'm in Ohio and Indy with the World Series, the middle and the last of the month.
Nice. Yeah. I think I'm going to be in Vegas basically from the 2nd or 3rd till about the 28th or 29th of March.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know. We'll figure it out.
Cool. Awesome, you guys. Well, have a great week.
Awesome.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.